Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time to the sweltering, sand-dusted streets of 19th century Cairo. Close your eyes and imagine the scene. The year is 1870. The sun has dipped below the horizon, but its heat lingers, radiating from the cobblestones and the ancient mud brick walls. A cacophony of sound washes over you, the distant call to prayer, the rhythmic clang of a coppersmith's hammer, the incessant chatter of merchants packing up their stalls in the narrow alleyways of the Khan el-Khalili Bazaar. You're here, a stranger in a strange land. Your purpose singular: to find one of the city's fabled, hidden hashish dens. These aren't the opulent, tourist-friendly coffeehouses you might read about in a guidebook, no. These are secret havens, known only to those who seek them out. You're about to venture into a world that exists in the shadows. A subculture of smoke and secrets. You probably won't survive this if you're not careful. Just kidding, mostly. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, your European boots scuffing against the dust and refuse of the alley. The air grows thick with the scents of cumin, roasted lamb, and something else, something smoky and sweet, clinging to the night air. The city, a labyrinth of twisting passages and dead ends, seems intent on swallowing you whole. You clutch the cryptic directions you were given, a series of turns and landmarks. A trail of breadcrumbs meant to lead you to a clandestine gathering place. It's a game of sensory navigation, where a particular scent or a specific sound is a signpost. The mainstream historical fact here, the thing they teach in the boring textbooks, is that Cairo in the 19th century was a massive, sprawling metropolis, a hub of trade and culture that connected Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. It was a city of incredible wealth and grinding poverty, of grand mosques and crumbling tenements. A place where every social strata coexisted, often uncomfortably. A quirky or fringe tidbit, something you won't find on a Wikipedia page, is that the city's alleyways were often deliberately designed to be disorienting to outsiders. They weren't just random urban sprawl, they were a form of architectural defense, meant to confuse invading armies and make it difficult for strangers to navigate. It was a kind of ancient urban planning, a bit like those one-way streets in your hometown that you swear were put there just to annoy you. As you turn a corner, the sounds of the bazaar fade, replaced by a softer, more intimate hum. You find yourself in a quieter residential quarter. The houses packed together like dominoes, their latticed windows, known as mashrabiyah, casting intricate shadows on the ground. You're looking for a specific door, one that looks no different from any other, but for a single, small detail. Historians still argue whether the Cairene hashish culture of the 19th century was a direct continuation of ancient traditions or a more modern phenomenon spurred by social changes and economic pressures. Some say it was a natural extension of Sufi practices, a way to seek spiritual transcendence, while others argue it was a form of escapism for a population struggling with a rapidly modernizing world. You, however, are just trying to find the front door. The directions said to look for a small, chipped ceramic tile shaped like a lotus flower, a symbol of rebirth and purity in ancient Egypt, tacked to the wall beside the doorframe. And there it is, barely visible in the low light, a tiny, almost forgotten detail that marks this place as something special, something set apart from the world outside. You found it. The air seems to hum with a quiet anticipation. You're not sure what to expect, but you know you're about to cross a threshold into a different kind of reality. The moment you step through the doorway, the world outside seems to dissolve. The sounds of Cairo, the smells of the street, all of it fades into a muted hum. It's as if you've crossed a barrier, not just of space, but of time and state of mind. You find yourself in a narrow, dimly lit hallway, the air now thick with the unmistakable, sweet aroma of hashish smoke, a scent that is both earthy and floral. It's a smell that speaks of quiet contemplation and slow burning pleasure. Your eyes, adjusting to the gloom, pick out the details. The walls are not the rough plaster of the alley, but are covered in ornate tapestries, their colors muted and faded by time, or maybe by the endless smoke. You can't be sure. The floor is covered and worn, but intricately patterned. Rugs, It's a sanctuary, a deliberate contrast to the chaos just outside. A mainstream historical fact is that the houses of wealthy Cairenes in this period were often designed to be inward-facing, with minimal external ornamentation but with incredible richness inside. Centered around a courtyard, this place, while not a grand home, seems to follow that same architectural philosophy. Plain on the outside, a different world on the inside. A figure emerges from the shadows at the end of the hallway. He's an older man, his face a roadmap of fine wrinkles, his eyes tired but knowing. He wears a simple, long-sleeved tunic and a quiet dignity. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He simply gestures with his hand, an invitation to continue forward. This is the keeper of the gate, the quiet guardian who ensures the wrong kind of energy, or the wrong kind of person, doesn't cross the threshold. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some of these establishments, the gatekeeper was often a former dervish or a spiritual seeker who had renounced the outside world. Their silent presence was part of the ritual, a way to signal that this wasn't a place for boisterous revelry, but for introspection. It was a kind of bouncer meets Zen master vibe, which, let's be honest, is a mashup you don't see often. You get the sense that a loud word or a sudden movement would be met with silent disapproval and a quiet dismissal. The rules here are not written, they're felt. Historians still argue whether the quiet, ritualistic nature of these hashish dens was a holdover from Sufi traditions, a way to use the drug as a tool for spiritual enlightenment, or if it was simply a practical necessity to keep the establishments discreet and avoid drawing the attention of the authorities. You, for one, are just happy to be here without having to sign a waiver. You follow the man's gesture, moving through another threshold into a smaller, secondary room. This is an antechamber, a space where you're meant to pause, to shed the dust and noise of the street before entering the main hall. It's a space for transition, a kind of airlock for the soul. You take a moment to dust off your clothes, to take a deep breath that is no longer of car exhaust and street grime, but of scented smoke and peace. There are a few other people here, all sitting silently on low cushions, nursing small cups of tea. They are waiting, just like you. A sense of shared purpose, of quiet communion, hangs in the air. The unspoken rule is clear: wait your turn, respect the quiet, and prepare yourself for what lies beyond. It feels less like a business and more like a club, a secret society with an incredibly chill dress code. As you wait, you notice the details of the room. A single, intricately carved wooden box sits on a low table, and beside it, a small brass oil lamp flickers, casting long, dancing shadows on the wall. The lamp is a small detail, but it speaks volumes. It's not electric, it's not modern, it's a throwback, a deliberate choice to keep things old school, to maintain a connection to a simpler, more traditional way of life. It makes you feel like you've been transported 100 years back in time. And you're just about to find out what happens when you light up in a place like this. After a few moments of quiet contemplation, the gatekeeper gestures again, this time toward a heavy curtain hanging at the far end of the antechamber. You get up, the plush cushion sighing in relief as you stand, and walk toward it. The curtain is thick, made of some heavy, dark wool, and as you push it aside, a new world opens up before you. A soft, warm light washes over you. But it's not from a lamp or the sun. It's the gentle, diffused glow of a dozen oil lamps, their flames carefully turned low. The air, which was merely thick with scent in the antechamber, is now a rich, hazy soup of hashish smoke, so dense you can almost taste it. It clings to everything, the rugs, the cushions, the very air itself, like a benevolent fog. You can't help but think of the ancient Egyptian belief that the god of the sun, Ra, navigated the sky in a boat. Right now, you feel like you're in a boat yourself, sailing on a sea of sweet, fragrant smoke. You've entered the main hall. It's a large, open space, unlike the constricted hallways and rooms you've just passed through. Low, circular tables are scattered across the floor, surrounded by piles of plump cushions and soft pillows. There are no chairs here, no hard edges. Everything is designed for comfort and ease. The walls are not bare but are covered with more tapestries and what look like framed pieces of intricate Arabic calligraphy. Though in the low light, you can't make out the exact words. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of low-to-the-ground seating arrangement known as a diwan, was a standard feature of traditional Middle Eastern homes. Designed for lounging and leisurely conversation rather than formal dining. It was a cultural norm, a physical manifestation of a society that valued community and storytelling over rigid etiquette. A quirky or fringe tidbit, something you might not know unless you're a real history buff, is that the specific patterns on the rugs and cushions often held secret meanings. A certain geometric design might represent protection, while a stylized floral pattern could symbolize life or prosperity. The furnishings weren't just for comfort, they were a silent language. A form of nonverbal communication that only the initiated could understand. It's like finding a secret symbol on a wall in a video game that you just know means there's a treasure chest nearby. Historians still argue whether the elaborate decor of these kifs, the Arabic word for a state of relaxed contemplation, and what these places were often called, was a deliberate effort to create an otherworldly atmosphere or simply a reflection of the interior design trends of the time. You, however, are just trying to find a place to sit without tripping over a water pipe. A man motions to you from a low table in the corner. He's older, with a kind face and a neatly trimmed beard. He's holding a small pipe in his hand, its bowl still glowing faintly. He smiles, a warm, welcoming gesture that puts you instantly at ease. You make your way toward his table, navigating the silent, seated figures scattered throughout the room. Some are hunched over, their heads bowed as if in prayer. Others lean back against the wall, their eyes closed, a faint smile on their lips. The air is still, save for the low murmur of conversation and the soft bubbling sound of water pipes. The atmosphere is one of profound tranquility, a quiet oasis in the middle of a bustling, chaotic city. You sit down on a soft cushion, the fabric sighing as it conforms to your weight. The man offers you a small, chipped ceramic cup filled with thick, sweet tea. The warmth of the cup seeps into your hands, a small comfort in this new and strange environment. The silence stretches between you for a moment, not an awkward silence, but one of mutual understanding. The unspoken question hangs in the air. Are you ready to join them? The man smiles, a crinkle forming at the corners of his eyes. And with a soft, practiced motion, he places a small lump of dark, resinous hashish onto a piece of burning charcoal held in a brass dish. The substance sizzles and gives off a fragrant puff of smoke, and he quickly places it into the bowl of a small, ornate pipe. He hands you the pipe with a slight nod, the gesture both an invitation and an offering. The pipe is cool and smooth to the touch, and you can feel the faint warmth radiating from the bowl. This is a moment of initiation, a crossing of a new kind of threshold. The air is still and heavy, and you can feel the eyes of the other patrons on you. A silent, curious, but not judging audience. It's the kind of moment that feels both entirely mundane and incredibly profound. You take the pipe, its stem cool against your lips, and inhale. The smoke is surprisingly smooth and sweet, not harsh or biting like you might expect. It fills your lungs and then your mind, a gentle warmth that begins in your chest and spreads outward, chasing away the last vestiges of the day's fatigue and anxiety. The world outside, with its noise and its demands, seems to recede further, becoming a distant, unimportant memory. A mainstream historical fact is that hashish was consumed in a variety of ways in 19th century Cairo. While smoking in a pipe or water bong was the most common, it was also often mixed into food, a method that was thought to produce a longer-lasting, more gentle effect. It was often incorporated into sweet pastries or a kind of thick, syrupy drink, known as muezzin. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the act of preparing and sharing the hashish was often as important as the act of consuming it. The careful process of crumbling the resin, heating it, and filling the pipe was a ritual, a silent dance of shared experience that bonded the participants together. It was a kind of unspoken language, a way of showing respect and creating a sense of community without the need for words. It reminds you of a modern-day coffee ceremony, where the careful preparation of the brew is part of the experience. Historians still argue whether this ritualization of the process was a deliberate social construct, a way to elevate the experience beyond mere drug use, or if it was simply a natural outgrowth of a culture that placed a high value on hospitality and shared rituals. You, however, are just enjoying the fact that someone else did all the work for you. You lean back against the soft cushions, the smoke swirling lazily around your head, and you feel yourself sinking into the moment. The room, which at first seemed so strange and foreign, now feels like a familiar, comfortable space. The other patrons, who were once just a collection of silent figures, now seem like kindred spirits, fellow travelers on a shared journey. You notice a man with a finely embroidered tunic and a grand turban, clearly a person of means, sitting and chatting quietly with a young, scruffy-looking fellow, likely a student or a poet. In this space, the usual social hierarchies seem to have dissolved, replaced by a kind of unspoken equality, a shared state of kif. It's an interesting phenomenon, a place where a merchant and a musician, a scholar and a soldier, could all sit side by side, their differences and their daily struggles left at the door. You've never seen anything quite like it. The world outside has its rules, its classes, its rigid divisions, but in here, in this smoky, quiet room, all of that seems to have melted away, leaving only a shared sense of peace. The hours here in the kif seem to stretch and contract, unbound by the regular rhythm of the world outside. The pipe is passed around the circle, a silent ritual of offering and acceptance. You watch as a man with calloused hands, a weaver or a laborer perhaps, carefully takes a hit, his eyes fluttering closed in a moment of quiet bliss. He passes it to a younger man, his face clean-shaven and his robes finely tailored, a student of the prestigious Al-Azhar University. Maybe. The sight is striking. These two individuals, separated by class and education, united in this shared space. It's a reminder that the great equalizer isn't money or power, but often, a shared state of mind. A mainstream historical fact is that Cairo in the 19th century was a hotbed of intellectual and social change. Scholars, artists, and political dissidents would often meet in these informal settings to discuss ideas and philosophies that were too radical for the official coffeehouses and mosques. It was a kind of underground salon, a place where the seeds of a new Egypt were being sown. You notice the variety of pipes being used. While the small, personal pipe you've been using is common, a larger, more elaborate Kalian, or water pipe, sits on a low stand in the center of the room. Its glass base gurgles softly as a man takes a long, slow draw from its long, flexible hose. This method of consumption, with the smoke passing through water, was believed to be cooler and smoother, a kinder way to enjoy the narcotic. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the water in these pipes was often infused with rosewater or mint leaves, not just to flavor the smoke, but also because it was believed to have a purifying effect. It was a small detail that spoke to a deeper cultural belief in the importance of spiritual and physical cleanliness. Historians still argue whether the use of hashish in these social settings was primarily for personal relaxation or if it was also a tool for creative and intellectual stimulation. Did the drug simply facilitate conversation, or did it unlock new ways of thinking? The answer, like the smoke in the room, is hazy. As you lean back, you listen to the conversations around you. They are not loud or boisterous, they are soft, low, and often punctuated by long periods of silence. A poet recites a few lines of verse, his voice a low, melodic drone. A merchant quietly recounts a story of a difficult negotiation, his frustration softened by the haze. The conversations glide effortlessly from the mundane to the profound. You hear discussions of philosophy, of the nature of the soul, and of the political climate of the city. You overhear a man talking about the French, their strange customs and their even stranger ideas about democracy. He speaks without anger or judgment, as if simply observing a curious species of insect. The hashish seems to strip away the pretense and the social masks, allowing for a more honest and open exchange. The air here is one of acceptance, of shared experience. You realize that you're not just in a place to consume a substance, you're in a place to consume an experience. It's a kind of performance art, a slow, gentle play in which everyone is both an actor and an audience member. And the script is being written in real time. As the night deepens, the atmosphere in the kif shifts from one of quiet anticipation to a soft, melodic hum. The conversations soften, and a new sound begins to fill the space, the gentle, hypnotic melody of a qanon, a stringed instrument similar to a zither. You hadn't even noticed the musician tucked away in a corner of the room, his eyes closed in concentration as his fingers dance over the strings. The music isn't loud or boisterous, it's subtle, weaving itself into the fabric of the hashish-fueled haze. It's a sound that seems to have a physical presence. A sound you can feel in your bones. A low vibration that resonates with the quiet hum of the room. A mainstream historical fact is that music played a crucial role in social gatherings across the Middle East. From elaborate wedding celebrations to quiet, informal get-togethers, the Qanon, with its rich, full sound, was a favorite for its ability to evoke a wide range of emotions. From deep melancholy to joyful abandon. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the specific scales used in this type of music, known as maqamat, were believed to have therapeutic effects. Each maqam was thought to be associated with a different state of mind or emotion, and a skilled musician could use them to guide the mood of a room. It was less about entertainment and more about a kind of musical healing. A way to use sound to deepen the sense of peace and contemplation. It's like a sonic massage for the soul. Historians still argue whether the music in these kifs was chosen for its specific therapeutic properties or if it was simply a matter of popular taste. Did the musicians actively try to manipulate the mood? Or were they just playing what people liked to hear? The debate continues. But you, for one, are just happy to be listening. The music washes over you. Its notes a series of gentle ripples in a calm pond. It seems to have a life of its own, rising and falling with the collective breath of the people in the room. You close your eyes, letting the sound and the sensation of the hashish take over. Your thoughts, which moments ago were a swirling tornado of observations and questions, now slow to a gentle, leisurely pace. The world shrinks to the size of this room. And everything outside, the bustling city, the worries of the day, your very identity as a stranger in a foreign land, all of it fades into the background. You feel a sense of profound connection, not just to the people around you, but to the music, to the smoke, to the very air you're breathing. It's a feeling of being completely present, of being a part of something larger than yourself. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated peace, and you've never felt so awake. The hours pass like minutes, and you're not sure if it's the music or the hashish. But you're not trying to figure it out. You're just letting it be. You are now fully immersed in the experience. The music and the haze creating a bubble of peace around you. A young boy, no older than 10, quietly enters the room, balancing a large tray in his hands. He moves with a grace that belies his age, a future in hospitality perhaps, and sets the tray down on a low table near you. The boy's presence is a reminder that this is not just a place for escape, but a functioning social space with its own unspoken rules and a sort of gentle commerce. The tray is laden with small, delicate cups and a large, steaming teapot, and a plate of sticky, sweet pastries. The scent of mint tea and rosewater fills the air, a delightful counterpoint to the earthy aroma of the hashish. A mainstream historical fact is that hospitality was, and remains, a cornerstone of Middle Eastern culture, offering food and drink to guests, even in a clandestine establishment like this, was a non-negotiable social custom. To refuse the offering would be a profound insult. The man who first invited you to his table pours you a cup of the tea. It's a dark, rich amber color, and the steam rising from the cup is thick with the scent of mint. He pushes the plate of pastries toward you. They are small, glistening with honey and sprinkled with chopped nuts. You take a bite of one, and the sweetness explodes in your mouth. A delicious and grounding sensation that anchors you back to your body. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the pastries, often made with ingredients like dates, pistachios, and honey, were not just a treat. They were also believed to have a calming effect, a way to counter the more intense psychoactive properties of the hashish. It was a kind of ancient food pairing, a culinary yin and yang. Historians still argue whether the food and drink served in these kifs were designed to enhance the hashish experience or to simply provide sustenance during a long evening of contemplation. Was it a deliberate part of the ritual, or just a good excuse for a late-night snack? The answer is probably a bit of both. Just like the best things in life, you sip the tea, its warmth spreading through your chest, and take another bite of the pastry. The combination of the warm, soothing tea and the sweet, sticky pastry feels perfect, a perfect complement to the tranquil state you're in. The music continues, a soft, rhythmic backdrop to the quiet murmur of the room. You watch as another man, this one with a beautifully embroidered skullcap, gestures to the young boy to bring him a fresh cup. The boy, in a quiet, respectful manner, does so. There's a profound sense of community here. A feeling of being among people who understand and accept you. Without judgment, the shared experience of the kif, the music, the food, and the hashish, has created a bond that transcends language and social status. You've journeyed into a different world, and it has welcomed you. You are no longer just a spectator, you are a participant. A quiet member of this fleeting, smoke-filled society. As you settle deeper into the cushions, the conversations around you begin to take on a more intellectual and philosophical tone. The small talk has been left at the door, replaced by a kind of quiet, but intense, discourse. You hear two men debating the merits of a new poem. Their voices low and earnest. One man quotes a line, and the other responds with a subtle critique, not of the verse itself, but of the emotion behind it. It's a level of literary analysis you wouldn't expect to find in a smoky back room. A mainstream historical fact is that Cairo was a central hub for the Arab literary and intellectual renaissance. Known as the Nahda, in the 19th century, poets, writers, and journalists gathered in these informal settings to discuss and disseminate new ideas, challenging traditional norms and laying the groundwork for modern Arab thought. These hashish kifs were, in many ways, the uncredited universities of the era. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some poets and writers believed that hashish helped them access a deeper, more profound level of creativity. They saw the drug not as a vice, but as a tool, a key to unlock the subconscious mind and a way to break free from the rigid structures of formal language and thought. It was a kind of controlled chaos, a way to invite inspiration in. It's a bit like a modern-day writer's retreat, but with more smoke and less Wi-Fi. Historians still argue whether the intellectual productivity of the Nahda was genuinely enhanced by hashish or if the drug simply provided a relaxed environment where people felt comfortable sharing their ideas. Did the drug make them smarter? Or did it just make them less inhibited? It's a chicken and egg kind of question. And a fascinating one. You listen as the conversation shifts from poetry to politics. A man with a scar over his eye speaks in hushed tones about the growing influence of European powers in Egypt. He isn't angry or hateful. He sounds more like a scholar observing a complex, slow-moving disaster. He talks about the British, their subtle maneuvers, their loans, and their promises. He speaks of the Egyptian ruler, the Khedive, and his struggle to balance modernization with tradition. It's a candid conversation, the kind that could never happen in a public space. The air here is one of trust and confidentiality. You get the sense that what is said here stays here. This is a place for honest, unvarnished truth, a space where the masks of daily life are left at the door. You're not just an observer anymore. You're a silent participant in a profound and privileged conversation about the past, present, and future of a nation. The night progresses, and the kif remains a haven of quiet contemplation, a stark contrast to the lively, boisterous coffee houses of the city. While those places are for loud jokes and animated games of backgammon, this is a space for quiet reflection. The air, once thick with the chaos of the streets, now feels clean and clear, cleansed by the gentle haze of the hashish. The conversations you've been listening to are punctuated by long stretches of comfortable silence, a kind of shared quietness that feels as meaningful as any spoken word. The people around you, from the weary merchant to the young student, all seem to be in a state of profound peace. They are not just escaping the world, they are transforming their experience of it. A mainstream historical fact is that the social function of these kifs was often misunderstood by European observers, who saw them as mere drug dens. In reality, they were complex social institutions that served a variety of purposes. From intellectual discourse to quiet contemplation, they were a kind of third space, a retreat from the pressures of work and family life, where men could gather and simply be. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Cairene dialect of Arabic has a variety of subtle terms for the different stages of hashish intoxication. From the initial feeling of calm to the deep, philosophical state of kif, it's a linguistic fingerprint of a culture that had a sophisticated and nuanced understanding of the substance. They didn't see it as a simple high, but as a journey with different stages and moods. It's a far cry from the modern day, stoned, or baked. Historians still argue whether the quiet, Meditative atmosphere of these establishments was a natural result of the drug's effects or a deliberate social construct. Did the hashish make them quiet? Or did they seek out the hashish because they wanted to be quiet? You get the sense that the answer is somewhere in the middle. The atmosphere is a kind of silent contract, an agreement to respect the peace and tranquility of the space. You notice the man who offered you the pipe earlier. He sits with his eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips, a picture of perfect serenity. You feel your own thoughts slowing down, the constant chatter in your mind receding to a low hum. You feel your body, your limbs heavy and relaxed, a perfect counterpoint to the lightness you feel in your mind. This isn't a rush or a jolt, it's a gentle sinking, a kind of peaceful descent. You find yourself simply observing, taking in the details of the room, the flicker of the oil lamps, the patterns on the rugs, the way the smoke catches the light. The world, which at first seemed so complicated, now feels simple and beautiful. You understand why people came here. It wasn't just about the drug, it was about the peace. It was about finding a moment of silence in a world that never stopped talking. It was a place where you could simply exist, without expectation or judgment, and that, you realize, is a kind of profound luxury. The profound peace you found in the kif feels like a secret, a precious jewel hidden in the heart of a chaotic city. But, of course, secrets this good rarely stay secret forever. You recall the whispers you heard on the streets of Cairo, the subtle hints of a changing world. A mainstream historical fact is that throughout the 19th century, European powers, particularly Great Britain and France, began to exert increasing influence over Egypt, both politically and culturally. This influence brought with it new ideas about morality, public order, and a growing disapproval of hashish consumption. European travelers and colonial administrators often viewed these kifs with a mix of fascination and moralistic horror, seeing them as symbols of a decadent, lazy, and vice-ridden society. They simply didn't understand the cultural nuances or the social importance of these spaces. This external perspective created a kind of scholarly debate that still continues. Historians still argue whether the growing European disapproval of hashish was a genuine concern for public health or a convenient pretext for exerting social control over a population they saw as other. Was it about medicine or power? It's a good question, a quirky or fringe tidbit, something you might not find in a formal history book, is that the French, in particular, were both fascinated and repelled by the drug. The French writer and poet Charles Baudelaire even wrote extensively about his experiences with hashish, albeit in a more romanticized and less scholarly way. He saw it as a tool for unlocking the artificial paradises of the mind, a way to escape the mundane and the bourgeois. His perspective was very different from the official French policy, which was to suppress its use. It's a classic example of do as I say, not as I do. The whispers you've heard on the streets are not just idle gossip, they are the early tremors of a coming crackdown. You hear a man at a nearby table mentioning a new law being considered, one that would make the public consumption of hashish a crime. He speaks with a tone of weary resignation, not anger. It's the sound of a person who knows that a cherished way of life is about to be forced underground. You realize that this place, this little bubble of peace and quiet, is fragile. It's a remnant of a more traditional way of life that is slowly being eroded by the forces of modernity and colonial power. The tranquility of the kif feels temporary, a final, beautiful exhale before the world outside comes rushing in. This makes the experience even more precious, a fleeting moment of history you are lucky to witness. It's like watching a star die in slow motion. It's sad, but it's also beautiful in its finality. The smoke that hangs in the air isn't just a physical substance, it's a kind of historical marker, a testament to a world that is about to change forever. The quiet murmur of the kif, which once felt so timeless, now seems to carry an undercurrent of tension. You can feel the weight of a coming change, a shift in the cultural winds of Cairo. The conversations you overhear are less about poetry and more about prudence. Men speak in hushed tones of a potential crackdown, of establishments being raided, of the need to be more discreet. A mainstream historical fact is that in the latter part of the 19th century, a series of official decrees and laws were enacted by the Egyptian government, often under pressure from European powers, that increasingly criminalized the sale and public consumption of hashish. These were not sudden, sweeping laws, but a gradual tightening of the legal noose. It was a slow-motion change that felt, to the people who lived through it, like an inevitable tragedy. The man who sits next to you, the one with the finely tailored robes, sighs and shakes his head. They do not understand, he says, his voice a low whisper. They think it is a matter of law, of order. They do not see that it is a matter of the soul. His words hang in the smoky air, a poignant lament for a world that is slipping away. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some of these dens, the patrons would develop a kind of secret language or set of hand signals to warn each other of approaching authorities or suspicious outsiders. It was a kind of quiet, non-verbal resistance, a way to protect their shared sanctuary. It's a bit like a modern-day password to a speakeasy, but 100 times more subtle and 1,000 times more important. Historians still argue whether this quiet resistance was a coordinated effort or simply a natural, spontaneous response to a shared threat. Did they organize, or did they simply adapt? The answer, you suspect, is a little of both. You look around the room at the faces of the men. They are not criminals or degenerates, they are poets, merchants, scholars, and laborers, all seeking a moment of peace and contemplation in a world that is becoming increasingly turbulent. You see a look of shared understanding in their eyes, a kind of quiet defiance. They know that the world outside sees them as a problem to be solved. But in here, in this smoky, serene space, they are simply men. This is their sanctuary, their last holdout against a world that is becoming louder, faster, and less tolerant of quiet contemplation. You feel a pang of sadness for them, for this fragile community that is about to be scattered. The hashish, once a tool for exploration, is now a symbol of resistance. The smoke that curls from the pipes is not just a fragrant haze, it is a quiet act of rebellion. A refusal to give up a way of life that has been cherished for centuries. And you are here to witness it. The air in the kif, once so still and peaceful, now feels charged with a subtle sadness. The whispers of legal crackdowns have cast a long shadow over the sanctuary. And you can see it in the eyes of the patrons. They're still here, still seeking their moment of peace. But the sense of carefree abandon has been replaced by a quiet defiance. You're observing a way of life in its final twilight hours. A mainstream historical fact is that the final, decisive blow to Cairo's hashish culture came in the form of a formal ban in 1879. Enacted by the Khedive, this ban, while not entirely successful at eradicating the practice, forced the establishments even further underground and transformed the act of consumption from a social ritual into a truly clandestine act. A man at a nearby table looks up from his pipe, his eyes meeting yours. He knows you're an outsider, but there is no hostility in his gaze, only a shared understanding of this bittersweet moment. He gestures to his pipe and then to the room, a silent acknowledgement of the beautiful, fleeting world they all inhabit. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that even after the formal ban, many of these establishments continued to operate, often in the same locations, but with more elaborate security measures and codes. Some even installed false walls or secret passages to aid in a quick escape during a raid. It was a kind of high-stakes game of hide and seek between the authorities and the city's hashish smokers. Historians still argue whether the ban was more successful at driving the trade underground than it was at stopping it altogether. Did it solve the problem? Or did it just make it more dangerous and less transparent? You get the sense that for the men in this room, it was the latter. You watch as a man carefully puts out his pipe, his face a mask of weary resignation. He stands, adjusts his robes, and with a final, lingering look around the room, he slips out the heavy curtained door and back into the street. His departure feels like a farewell, not just to this place, but to an entire era. The air feels a little colder in his absence, a little less full of shared peace. You realize that what you are witnessing is more than just a social gathering, it's a living museum. A final performance of a culture that is being systematically dismantled. The smoke that still hangs in the air feels less like a comforting haze and more like a ghost. The last breath of a dying world. You feel a profound sense of privilege to be here, to witness this beautiful, sad ending. You've come to a hashish den, but you're leaving with a history lesson. The weight of the impending change hangs in the air, a final, lingering note in the symphony of the night. You've witnessed the serene beauty of the kif, and now you're seeing its slow, Dignified fade. The air is still fragrant with the sweet, earthy smoke, but it feels like a memory more than a present reality. You notice a few men quietly packing up their pipes and leaving. Their heads held high. They aren't running or sneaking out. They're simply retreating to the shadows. A strategic withdrawal. A mainstream historical fact is that the British Empire, which had a significant influence over Egypt at this time, played a key role in the final push for a complete ban. Their view on hashish was shaped by a combination of Victorian moralism and a desire to control the local population. They viewed it as a societal ill that needed to be stamped out, regardless of its cultural or historical context. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptian hashish trade didn't disappear after the ban. It simply became more organized and sophisticated. The trade routes, which once were informal networks, became the basis for a more extensive and secretive smuggling operation. It was a kind of proto-underground economy, born out of necessity and a shared love for the substance. Historians still argue whether the ban was a true reflection of the will of the Egyptian people or an imposed cultural shift from a colonial power. Was it a genuine moral crusade, or an act of cultural imperialism? The man who spoke of the European influence earlier looks over at you. A known look in his eyes. He understands the complexities of the situation, the layers of politics and culture that have led to this moment. He sees you not as an enemy, but as a witness. A person who will carry the story of this place back into a world that will likely never understand it. You feel a profound sense of sadness for this place. This beautiful, hidden sanctuary. You've come to understand that it was more than just a place to consume hashish. It was a place for poets to find their voice, for scholars to debate, and for everyday men to find a moment of peace. It was a place for community and quiet contemplation, a place for the soul. And now, it is a place for ghosts. The smoke that still hangs in the air feels like the last breath of a dying culture. A final, beautiful gesture of defiance. You know that you will remember this place long after you've left, and that the world outside will never truly understand what was lost. The soft hum of the room, the low murmur of conversation, the hypnotic melody of the Qanon, all of it will live on in your memory. A testament to a world that was both real and, in a way, a beautiful dream. The night is coming to an end, and you know it's time to leave the sanctuary and re-enter the world outside. The quiet atmosphere in the kif has shifted from one of communal peace to one of individual reflection. The men are no longer a single, unified group. They are separate souls, each contemplating the end of their cherished ritual. You get up from your cushions, the fabric sighing as it loses your weight, and make your way to the curtained entrance. You don't say goodbye to the man who welcomed you. There's no need. The silent nod you give him, and the one he returns, is a more powerful farewell than any words could be. A mainstream historical fact is that the social function of these kifs was eventually replaced by more modern, state-sanctioned coffee houses and social clubs, places that were more aligned with European ideals of public order and morality. The hashish culture didn't disappear, but it lost its public, communal heart. You slip through the heavy curtain and into the antechamber. The air here feeling colder, less infused with the warmth and scent of the main hall. The young boy is gone, and the space feels empty and a little sad. You notice your own reflection in a small, tarnished mirror on the wall. Your face looks different to you. Older, maybe a little wiser. You're not just a tourist anymore, you're a witness to a moment in history. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some of these establishments, the gatekeeper would offer a small, symbolic gift to patrons on their way out, a small piece of candy or a single dried fig, as a way of sending them back into the world with a little bit of the kif's peace. It was a final, graceful gesture, a kind of benediction. Historians still argue whether this practice was a holdover from ancient hospitality rituals or a more recent addition, a kind of insurance against bad luck in the turbulent world outside. You, however, are just grateful for the journey. You emerge from the building and back onto the street. The sun is not yet up, but a pale, pre-dawn light is beginning to cast a soft glow on the rooftops. The city is still sleeping, its chaotic energy temporarily silenced. The air is cool and clean, and you take a deep breath. The smell of dust and spices and something new, the scent of a city waking up, filling your lungs. You feel different. The world, which once seemed so rigid and unyielding, now feels a little softer. A little more mysterious. The journey you took wasn't just a physical one from a street to a room. It was a journey into a different way of seeing and being. You came to find a hashish haven. And you found a sanctuary for the soul. The experience will stay with you long after the scent of the smoke has faded from your clothes and the dust of the street has been washed from your boots. You've had a glimpse behind the curtain. And you are a changed man. You find yourself back on the streets of Cairo. The pre-dawn light turning the narrow alleyways from black to a soft gray. The city is beginning to stir. But its noise and energy are still a distant hum. You feel a sense of profound quiet. A peace that has nothing to do with the absence of sound and everything to do with the stillness in your own mind. The journey from the kif to the street was a short one in terms of distance. But a long one in terms of emotional and spiritual travel. You clutch the small, chipped ceramic lotus flower that the gatekeeper pressed into your hand as you left. A silent memento of the world you just experienced. It's a small, beautiful thing. A quiet promise that a world of peace and contemplation still exists. Even if it has to hide in the shadows. A mainstream historical fact is that many of the artisans and merchants who were patrons of these kifs also had their own personal, small rituals for consumption, keeping the tradition alive in their homes long after the public spaces were gone. You walk through the streets, which are now beginning to fill with the sounds of daily life, the creak of a cartwheel, the lowing of a donkey, the first distant calls of a street vendor. The world you left behind is reasserting itself. But you are not the same person you were when you left it. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the lotus flower, a symbol of rebirth and purity in ancient Egypt, was a deliberately chosen symbol for these clandestine establishments. It represented the idea that you could enter a state of peaceful contemplation and emerge as a renewed, cleansed person, free from the burdens of the outside world. Historians still argue whether the symbolism was a conscious nod to ancient beliefs or a more recent adoption of an older, resonant motif. You, however, feel the weight of the symbolism in your hand. You look back at the unmarked door. A single chipped tile, the only sign of the magic that lies within. The door is now just a door. And the alley is just an alley. The world has returned to normal. But you have not. The hashish, the tea, the music, the quiet conversations, all of it has fused together in your memory into a single, beautiful experience. It wasn't a mere escape, it was a profound act of self-discovery. A quiet rebellion against a world that demands too much and offers too little. You came looking for a story. And you found one. A beautiful, sad, and ultimately hopeful story of a way of life that refused to be extinguished. You carry a part of it with you now. A piece of quiet in a world of noise. A piece of peace in a world of chaos. And as you walk toward the rising sun, you feel that you have, in a way, been reborn. The sun is just beginning to break over the rooftops, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The sounds of Cairo are now a gentle, constant hum, a lullaby for a city waking up. The air is still cool, a gentle caress against your skin. You feel a profound sense of peace, a quiet calm that has settled deep in your bones. The journey you took tonight was more than just a historical excursion, it was a journey inward. A quiet exploration of a different way of being. The world you left behind is still here, with all its noise and all its demands. But you are now a quiet, a peaceful, and a hopeful part of it. The lotus flower in your hand is a quiet promise that peace can be found even in the most unlikely of places. It's a reminder that a little bit of quiet, a little bit of peace, can change everything. So let that be your final thought as you drift off. Just a little bit of quiet, a little bit of peace. Nothing else matters. Just this moment, just you. And now, as the city wakes up, you can finally rest.